Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. My name is Alex Collar and I'm the on-air producer. Today and all week we're joined by professionals in the farming and agriculture industry around Colorado, and so it's our pleasure to introduce Zach Riley of the Colorado Farm Bureau. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, really good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for having you. We're really appreciative of having you on here. We know that it's tough with the scheduling and stuff. You're a busy guy, and you're in and out of the policy world all over the Southwest here. It sounds
sure.
like. Most recently, Colorado Farm Bureau, but you've been involved all over the Southwest, is that right?
Yeah. It's been kind of an exciting trail getting to Colorado. I've worked in congressmen's offices, and I've worked on campaign trails, and then worked for the cattle growers and Farm Bureau for the last few years, and including New Mexico Farm Bureau. So I've been here for about a year, which was a beautiful transition. It was so natural coming here. It was just like I moved to the big brother house of New Mexico, so it was awesome. I still love New Mexico, deep-seated tie to there, but more deeply it's my passion and concern for agriculture and the future of our food sources.
Awesome. Yeah. And so, how did you get into that? I mean, obviously food and ag, it's a really fundamental thing. It's the original science, the original human technology, right? What?
Man, I like to eat. No, I was raised cattle ranch and worked part-time farm. I hoed my fair share of watermelon patches growing up, and ran plenty of plows and worked cows my whole life. And so this was just such a natural, obvious direction. I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a kid, but this was just so much more of a better fit for me. Best of plans are always meant to be broken, right? So this was great.
Sure. Well, I can see so you wanted to maybe be a lawyer, and then you combined the agriculture.
Yeah.
Found agriculture policy.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes.
So why don't you lead us through a little bit? You were in New Mexico before. You said you worked for a congressman, and you're usually behind the camera on these types of shows.
Yeah. No, it was so fun working for him. And staunch supporter of the ag world and business world, and incredibly friendly. So I believed in his mission wholeheartedly. But I followed him from radio station to radio station at least twice a month. We would start our pilgrimage at 3 a.m. and just bump from radio to radio. And I did. I always sat back in the booth and got to listen to solid gold on the air with him. He just had that golden voice, and he could talk his way through a policy or a procedure or something with no problem, with nary a hang up. And so, I truly respected the man. And then, of course, went from behind the scenes to continuing to work behind the scenes. Worked for the cattle growers for a couple of years. Worked on various projects like fire relief for producers and special interest items like invasive species prevention and mitigation and so on. It was an interesting experience, and then moved over to Farm Bureau. Everybody goes, "Oh, you sell insurance?" No, I work for the company that does. But I stayed on that policy side and was able to really hone from, working from the congressman, which is a very broad spectrum of issues and topics, to work my way down to just working for, people who grow and produce food. And was really able to bring that in and hone it in on just a few things, and it was really great.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Farm Bureau? What's if we've never heard it before,
Sure.
we might be interested in joining?
Yeah, so Farm Bureau is a nonprofit organization that is mostly funded through its interest in the Farm Bureau insurance side of things. But people buy a membership with the Farm Bureau Federation whenever they sign up for Farm Bureau insurance. But you can also just be a member like myself. I can't afford good insurance. I have to buy cheap insurance. But you can just be an outside member, and you don't have to be a grower. You don't have to be living on a farm or a ranch. You can just be, because it's important to you because you eat. Everybody needs a lawyer or a doctor at least once in their life, but everybody needs a farmer 3 times a day. So it's important to have that food aspect, and that's where we harp on that point. Is, if you want to be a member, you're involved in a process and a part of something that's bigger that doesn't just feed you but feeds the world too. So that's where Farm Bureau comes into play. And membership is not like a pricey, gentleman's club. It's $60 a year for an average membership, or $40 a year for just an associate membership. And so it's not like we're trying to break the bank with folks, but you get several benefits from our lobbying efforts and our communication efforts and that type of thing.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe you can just kind of unpack some of those benefits for people. So you said it sounded like you don't need to be necessarily kind of an organization or even a farmer, right?
No. Yeah. So you could be an individual like yourself, like we were speaking with your producer earlier. You just be a hobby gardener in your backyard. And,
okay.
I tell everybody we work with micro farms, which are gardens, and all the way up to, several thousand acres worth of farming and ranching. It's just, it's a broad spectrum of folks that just enjoy what is the work of agriculture. And agriculture is anybody who grows something from start to finish and sees it through, and part of that is being part of something bigger. So to say, you're not just everybody's corporate farms or whatever. That's the hang up. Everybody goes, it's all about corporate farming, but not really, because only 2% of American agriculture is actually owned by corporations. So I'm like, the other 98% are people who own what they do, and so it's interesting stats, I realize, but yeah, it's everybody. I don't grow anything other than backyard now.
Really?
And I grow my herbs and my stuff in my backyard, but nothing spectacular. I mean, my neighbors enjoy it sometimes, but
sure.
That's about it. Or they don't. I don't. Maybe they're just too nice to say.
But it's a community building kind of exercise, and they offer some different. You said insurance. I saw there was a communication component to it.
Sure. Yeah, we do a lot of, like I said, Farm Bureau's a broad spectrum. We represent a very diverse group of folks. We've got just roughly over 24,000 member families from around the state.
Wow.
And so we do a lot of communication work, a lot of working that social media component, a lot of pushing paper out, hey, here's a postcard, you should sign on to such and such. And, like we just finished doing a postcard on the Farm Bill.
Okay.
And it was like, Farm Bill, it's the biggest thing that happens once a decade to people who eat or like to, and people who would like to,
yeah.
But also people who grow the food. And so they're tied deeply to one another. Everybody, you hear this discussion about, we should separate the Farm Bill out, and we shouldn't have the SNAP programs, and we shouldn't have the farm programs connected to one another, but they're so deeply tied. You can't really have one without the other. And so we ran this postcard that said, if eating and Farm Bill is important to you, sign the postcard. And that's what we do on the comm side. We run campaigns and pushes to try to help. But also we get involved in so many other things, especially from the comm side. We do the Pedal the Plains.
Okay, what is that?
Which is a fantastic bike event if you ride a bike. I don't personally. They don't make one my size. Yeah, it would be like those giant front wheel ones that you used to see. Yeah, but also in the back. If you were going to put me on a bicycle.
7 foot guy.
Yeah, and my size, I'm like, that's a cute bike. But we do that Pedal the Plains event, and that is a terrific event. People of all walks in life are involved in that, and people who just love to bike or just like to come watch. They incorporate farm and ranch stops along the way, so that you can stop and get your pickle juice shots or whatever, so that you can amp back up. But then also there's other folks there from the communities, and they do farm tours, and they check out the stop, and the producer or whoever owns the place usually talks about what they do and how going back to the Farm Bill as an example, how that impacts them or how that benefits them so that they can better produce what they do. And so we get involved in lots of stuff.
And so the Farm Bill is probably one of the biggest things going on right now as far as agriculture in Colorado is concerned.
Yeah.
What is the Colorado Farm Bureau doing as far as their approach to this policy? What do they think about how this is going right now?
Yeah. No, so it's been an interesting process getting here. Hard-fought battle in the House to get a farm bill passed, and got that done. And then it's not as hard, but still hard-fought battle in the Senate to get a farm bill passed. And so each of them are very unique in multiple qualities. From the farming perspective, there's items in both that are very different from the 2014 farm bill that's set to expire this fall. That fund a lot of necessary safeguards and safety nets that farmers need to continue to do business. And part of that is being able to buy the future inputs to grow the next go round. And so those expire every 5 years after they're passed, but their impact is further reaching. So that comes out, they stretch the impact of an actual farm bill into a 10-year window. So it's always working in the rears, but really working in the 10-year advance on those things. So with this farm bill, we'll take both versions now, and they'll go to conference. I don't know if they've named the conferees yet. We're in 4th of July recess with the Senate and House, and so they like their recesses
Absolutely.
up there. I mean, that's part of being a congressman.
Free haircuts.
You get to go to recess and get a free haircut. So I wish, sometimes it sounds a lot like elementary school. We go back to recess. But we actually are very fortunate to have really great representatives from our state, and some really forward thinkers that are middle of the road guys, and they're the ones that get stuff done. And so we've had good policy come in both versions of this farm bill. I'm really excited to see what comes out of this conference. There have been modernizing efforts and improvements to the existing, but they left intact a lot of what was there from 2014, so that a lot of this doesn't just change. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater every 4 years kind of thing. This time, okay, we're going to leave intact some of these things that are working, but could be improved upon. And so that's where we're at. And hopefully, I'm really positive and hopeful that by the end of this month, we'll have a farm bill ready to rock and roll.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it sounds like the gubernatorial candidates have kind of put out what they think about kind of the agriculture policy. Did you want to weigh in on that?
I try to shy away from too much on the gubernatorial side. Yeah. You never want to get in the weeds, right?
Absolutely.
With taking sides. But it sounds metaphor. Like there's some interest from all candidates, even after this primary, in safeguarding some of those things and helping make sure that Colorado, agriculture is still number 2 producer in this state as far as an economic driver and contributor. So, we're second only to tourism. Wow. Which is amazing if you look at the dollars in the state. So nobody realizes that until you really start comparing and analyzing, and you go, oh, wow, ag is, who knew? But the contributor, because, from farming and ranching perspective, if you're growing in a state and you're a large producing state as far as food and agriculture production goes, that contributing factor is multiple fold. It's not just the producer buying his seed, but it's the producer buying his water, his diesel, his equipment, his everything. But then it's the buyer buying the food on the shelf, the produce in the store, the farmer's market. There's so many little contributing factors that come from agriculture. It's not just a one singular, one-trick pony kind of thing. And so it's amazing what agriculture does to an economy if agriculture is robust and successful and profitable.
Wow, so I didn't realize that number 2 after tourism, it's the second largest. Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah.
And
we're proud of that.
Yeah.
I'd love to be number 1, but
well, and like you say, it's sort of hard for people to kind of wrap their heads around all these knock-on economic effects,
right?
Infrastructure. So, and I wanted to, maybe if you want to talk more about kind of those wider market effects. What do you think about what's going on with NAFTA and with kind of international?
So agriculture is huge, right?
Yeah.
One of our biggest export markets is Canada at $38 billion. annually. And that's just the ag export market. And so, and of course, we have our neighbors to the south that are Mexico, and we export almost as much with Mexico as well. And we need that NAFTA security that's going to be continued. President Trump spoke to the American Farm Bureau Federation back in January with Secretary Perdue, who's Secretary of Agriculture right now, and they talked about safeguarding agriculture in these discussions. And so I would really like to see that continue. There's room for modernization. Bios didn't exist when NAFTA was passed. It just wasn't even a talk. There's always room for modernization in these agreements, periodically. But we've got to get somewhere quick, because the markets are starting to be this wave effect, and these shifts they're just getting alarming. Heard tale of a seed grower or seed producer there in the Eastern Plains who lost an $11 million contract with Mexico because of the uncertainty. And it's like, you can't agree with panicking, but you can't blame people for panicking and saying, okay, well, if that's not going to be there in a year, I need to do something else for me. And that's just the way it works, right? That's the way good business works. And so we've got to get to a place where we have some security in this. And especially, agriculture is down by almost 40% in the last 5 years. In the next 2 years, we could be at what we look like as far as ag on a whole in the 1980s. So for us to have had such an amazing growth pattern in 20 years, and it's not, I don't know what the actual outside impact is. I don't think it's NAFTA specifically, but there's a lot of contributing factors, right? Because agriculture is huge, but we've got to get somewhere where we provide some security and safety nets, and there are some things being brought up in this farm bill that are trade security items, but we still need to get somewhere, because we do need to continue doing business with everybody else. That's how it works, right? We grow things that we don't necessarily want, and they grow things that they know they can get a better price here for. So why not swap them out, and trade that out? And that's a bigger discussion, obviously, but it's amazing how big trade is, even in just little old Colorado in the grand scheme of things.
Sure.
So
yeah. So what is Colorado's role, I guess, on this international stage? You're talking about kind of seed producers working with Mexico, and Canada is obviously our biggest trade partner. What does CFB want to see as far as policy on that scale?
Oh yeah. One of the things we harp on is do no harm, right? So we say it exists, it's in good shape. Do no harm to what's there. Don't fix it if it's not broken, but you can improve upon it. So like I said, the biometrics and stuff like that, you can improve upon that. You figure out ways to incorporate that in the discussion, the greater discussion. It seems like genetic engineering and genetic crops that have improved gene traits or whatever seem to constantly come under fire. That's a great talking point for some special interest groups. And the truth of the matter is as far as NAFTA and trade is concerned, the food source would not be as viable if we didn't have those available. So we need to include that in those discussions as well. But, there's so many other aspects to modernizing that agreement and really improving upon that. There's so much room within there. But, yeah, I mean, really, it's to us, it's all about do no harm. If you're going to place tariffs on certain things, remember that impact is much greater than just, a steel mill kind of thing. People buy tractors, too. And tractors are made of metal, and so there's all kinds of discussions around that, I realize, and they're much bigger than me here in the CFB, but it's important that we do not penalize farming and ranching at this point any worse and make them struggle any more than they already are, because everybody screams about the corporate farm thing, but if you hurt the little guy, eventually the little guy gets out of the business. And so we want to keep people here and working and doing their job, and that's growing food.
Awesome. And so for Coloradans in particular who might want to get involved with your organization, what do you recommend if they're hearing about this right now? This sounds like something that they might want to be involved in. They like the opportunities as far as insurance is concerned and the comms side is concerned. Where do you direct them to?
So I like to tell everybody, go to our website. We have a brand new website, talking about comms. I'm really proud of our comms shop and the hard work they've put into this. This website is amazing. That's coloradofarmbureau.org. Or if they're interested in the insurance side, I would definitely say go to the insurance website or, Google your local Farm Bureau agent. That's the best part about Colorado Farm Bureau Insurance is you have a local guy or gal who's willing to work with you and help you basically piecemeal or put together exactly what works for you. And, maybe insurance isn't for you that day, but you can certainly talk to that agent about getting involved with just the organization as well. And, hey, I just want to be a member. If I don't want to do the insurance because something else is in the works for you, just talk to them and get signed up for membership.
And so you're kind of giving the little guy a voice is the idea here.
Yeah. So we've got our Summer Ag Issues meeting coming up in La Junta in 2 weeks, actually. Gosh, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
But that's going to be down in La Junta. We get together once a year for the summer, and we do some tours. We look at some innovative ideas, and especially as far as like watering and so on and so forth. And then we sit around and we talk about what is important. What's important to you on your home property and your place, and are you growing 5 acres? Or are you growing 5,000 acres? Whatever it is, what do you think is going to impact you tomorrow, next day, or a year from now, or whenever? And so we bring together our little guy, our producers, and they make the policy. And we have a governing policy that tells people like me what we will and won't do, in essence, and where our advocacy efforts will lie, and what's going to be important, and how we're going to prioritize our money and our time as an organization. And so it's really great. It's a grassroots, truly from the ground up. I mean, there is zero top down, which is awesome because that takes that responsibility off of us. We say, no, it's policy. And that's not just policy of one person. That's policy of 28,000 people from around the state. And obviously not all 28,000 show up every summer kind of thing, but they stay deeply involved, and it's so easy to get involved in the process. And plus, everybody likes the summer meeting because it's a little vacation from running the plow or whatever it is you do. It's a great breath for a moment, just to step away for a couple of days and be a part of a process bigger than you.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it is that real community building effort that you're talking about as well.
Yeah.
So, just with the last couple minutes here, what when you're talking to these Colorado producers, what are they saying is their biggest issue right now, the thing that they're most concerned about?
Oh, I mean, we live in the West. It's always going to be water, right? Whiskey is for drinking, water is for fighting, kind of thing. It's so true, especially with a lack of snowfall this year. The fear, there's all kinds of new technologies and ideas, of course, and obviously, there's a lot of water banking projects and a lot of water storage projects. We talk a lot about NISP, which is one to the north of here. That's a water storage opportunity. We really harp on a good water stewardship and so on. There's always opportunities there. One of the things that's obviously most important to everybody right now is that we get some regulatory relief. EPA just came out last week with their rollback on the wotus rule from 2015. They're going to push that back, and they're open for a 30-day comment period right now on that. And so hopefully by the end of this 30-day period, they'll start writing better rules that impact people better on that level of how to manage the water on your property, not making it federal government property, basically. And so that's where we're at, is water, and then Farm Bill. It's once a decade, basically, and it's a priority number one for us, and especially our members at this point in time.
Awesome. Well, we're joined here by Zach Riley of the Colorado Farm Bureau. We'll be back after this break to talk a little bit more about issues facing Coloradans. Thank you so much. Join us a bit.
Part of the Afford agenda, and I just want to give you the heads up that way, is that they're like, well, Lisa, she's another COPRT employee, and those are the other two ought to be on the same type of contract as Jeff is. And Peter, like, just like you, Jeff, it'll actually be contract and break like that. Hello. Let me get that one up. So just know that that was there. We chatted about that. We chatted about that. He likes our update.
Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. My name is Alex Collar and I'm the on-air producer. Today and all week we're joined by professionals in the farming and agriculture industry around Colorado, and so it's our pleasure to introduce Zach Riley. Hello, and welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Collar, the on-air producer, and we're really happy to have Zach Riley of the Colorado Farm Bureau on air here. All week we are talking farm and agriculture in Colorado. And so Zach's joining us to talk a little bit about kind of on the ground what's happening as far as agriculture in Colorado, and also what's being done in the policy world. And so before the break and during the break, we kept talking about kind of this primary issue for most Colorado farmers, which is water. And I think that caught me off guard because it seems so obvious, but it was not the first thing I was thinking of. But obviously, you know, we're out here. Water is scarce in the southwestern United States. And you were mentioning just briefly that there were kind of some issues as far as private property is concerned with water. Did you want to dig into that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. You know, water and private property are synonymous. I mean, they go hand in hand, and they have. And the states decided that years ago, and the states decided how the waters would be managed within each state, right? So in 2015, EPA came out with these rules called Waters of the U.S., or WOTUS, as they were affectionately dubbed later, and because we all love speaking acronyms in the government world. But they decided that this is how they would best decide how your private property could be managed. And so talking about that briefly, we rolled it back a little bit in the courts. The courts said no. The Supreme Court, the highest court, said that needs to be decided on the lower courts level that's more tied or connected to the states. And then the states, the lower courts and the appellate courts said, you know, we're going to uphold a stay of injunction here, and we're just not going to do this. And 3 of those lower courts, effectively 29 states or 27 states, upheld that. And so EPA went back and said, okay, we're going to wheel this back about 200 feet, you know, at least 2 years, and we're going to say, well, let's go back to the drawing board. And so that's where we got to. But, you know, we recognized that private property in Colorado is probably one of the deepest seated, you know, important things to everybody. You know, it's part of that American dream, right? Absolutely. Everybody wants to own their piece of this land, and it's amazing. You know, it's an amazing dream. It's amazing realizing of a dream. And so to do that, you know, you want your piece in this world being safeguarded too. And so there was a few folks that got together and said, you know what, that's important, and we need to come together with an option when that is diminished. The Constitution provides for so much, but we need greater options where that happens, and at least improvement to justifiably make whole those people that lose that little piece in this world and their stake in the game. And, you know, because not everybody gets to own property. That's just the reality of what life is. And so those that can, you know, you don't want to take that away from them without at least making them whole. And so we are working a proposition as part of our mission that would safeguard that, and not necessarily just safeguard it, but is also add in just compensation for the loss of or diminution of. And so that's a pet project there at the Farm Bureau, but it's not just Farm Bureau. There's a lot of groups working on that, and a lot of like-minded organizations and so on, that, and some that aren't necessarily like-minded, but that see that this is a very like cause that it ties us all back to our homes. And so we're going to be working on that, and hopefully we'll see it go on to become a prop later on down the path.
So my only experience, I guess, with this issue, we had a family friend when I was younger, and I think they got contacted by the state or whatever it was because they were going to be building a highway basically through their yard, and they had built this house, and it was, you know, obviously everyone was really upset. What does that look like in Colorado with agriculture? Is it similar to that? It is. So
yeah, it's all the same. The standard right now in Colorado is basically the lowest level diminution of, and it has to be an entire eminent domain diminution in order for a person to receive any kind of compensation and actually have to go to court and deal with it. And it becomes so costly, and the return doesn't seem to outweigh the cost. And it's just, so it's not friendly to the property owner at this point in time. And so this would take into account where, the government may or may not see fit to have better judgment over what land should be used for what project. And so this would actually make whole those people in that instance where they lose their yard or their home or whatever. I saw a property the other day where an exit ramp literally ran within 50 yards of their front door. And I thought, what? Why? But then you look and the house is vacant.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, they lost their home in this process. And then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, gosh, I hope they were made whole in that process. And I'm like, I wonder if they got paid or if they got what is the current standard right now. And that standard is just so low that we've got to bring that current and make people whole in this loss.
Sure. And so another issue, it sounds like, for CFB, and maybe you want to talk about this just a little bit. I know that it was something that you said that, obviously isn't maybe like the top issue being, right, like water and private property and these things, but a lot of talk recently about renewable fuel standards,
right,
and how that might affect Colorado farmers and consumers.
Yeah.
Do you want to weigh in on that a little bit?
So I can always loosely connect private property to just about anything, and renewables are no different. I mean, renewables are a bioproduct, right? So corn generally, and corn is grown on private property typically, and so yeah, I can loosely connect it anyway. Renewables have been topic of discussion, especially in this administration. 29 states restrict the summer sales of E15 right now. And those summer months are so critical on E15 sales. And, when you start talking, that's more than half the states restricting that E15 sales, which provides some market volatility and uncertainty, especially for the growers. And especially in this day and age where we're constantly dealing with this market volatility and uncertainty. If you had 12-month sales of E15, that's a guaranteed sell and price on product, and there's no slowdown in essence. You're not hitting that accordion effect each time you get there, and so making it less restrictive is where we want to get to in this space, and I think that would be a win-win for everybody. The RVOs, the renewable volume obligation, just came out last month, I think, or earlier this month, that would standardize the obligation on all imported fuels and domestically produced, because right now the standard is only on domestic, and so this way it would basically equalize the playing field, right? And so everybody would have to adhere to that standard, which helps a lot, but we've got to get to a level bit of continuity with that sales project. And so, renewable fuels that's the way the world's going, and so if we can get somewhere within a happy space there, I think that's what we want to do for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's sort of like the knock-on effect you were talking about in terms of the infrastructure and the economics of that.
Cause and effect every time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, and like you said, too, I think a lot of people maybe don't recognize all the jobs and the
360,000 jobs, I think, is what is realized within the renewable fuel standards market nationwide. And so, it's just amazing. That's an Amazon scale, job market right there. And we've got that already in place. And so if we can guarantee that 12 months instead of 6 to 9 months in some cases.
Because just to clarify for the audience, you're saying there's sort of like an arbitrary restriction on this right now. Yeah, that only exists in a few states. Okay. 29 states have that arbitrary restriction that says, well, summer months, no, but who's to say what the summer months are in each individual state? And so it just creates this almost strange regulatory
patchwork, around it, and it makes it very difficult to operate within that space, especially for fuel.
Right, and speaking of strange regulatory patchworks, you mentioned that there was kind of a national effort to consolidate policy on bioengineered foods. And so you mentioned briefly, and I might mess up the name of this, I know it's probably supposed to be an acronym, the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standards?
Yes. And so that comes out periodically, and it has to be renewed and has to be revisited and revised and made better and improved upon, right? And so the new one just came out in the last couple of months, and it's been out for comment to be considered by the general public, because the government recognizes everybody needs a voice and needs to be a part of the process. And so basically what it does is it recognizes that food, as long as it's grown safely and produced correctly and meets the scientific standards, can be labeled as such, and it takes away that whole misnomer of, everything that might have a genetic component, any kind of gene modification, whatever, is dangerous. What it does is it just clearly marks that this is an apple that has been genetically modified to brown in less time. It's pretty simple. And it allows the discerning consumer to look at said label and go, okay, well, that's all it does. How's that going to hurt me? And, it puts that burden of decision back on the consumer, but takes away that fear component. We worked really hard on the national level with the American Farm Bureau Federation to get that transparency in labeling done back in 2016. And so the disclosure standards just kind of codify in rule what that looks like. And, it takes away that skull and crossbones and that, just the fear mongering is pulled out of this. And so it's really, it's good. It's a good thing. And farmers, we understand food's the most important thing going on your table every day. You want to know, and you have a right in some instance, to know what that looks like and what it looked like getting there. And so this way, transparency and labeling, it's just a voluntary program that allows people to participate in it and include what is in that food.
It's less of an all or nothing approach. It's more kind of an educational approach. Sort of here's specifically what we're talking about.
Right, and that's a terrific point. Is educating not only yourself but the grower and the buyer, and having an idea, so you're not just accepting that things are what they are for face value. And so it's the same with voting, right? You want to educate yourself as a voter. You want to educate yourself with anything. And so this way, it's just another option for educating the discerning customer in essence. So
sure, I like that. It's like otherwise you're just going to the store, and if you're just buying based on the label, it's like voting based on D or R after the name. Right?
Yeah. I love that comparison. I use it a lot.
Oh, really?
Like, are you a straight ticket voter? Or do you like to read about the candidate? It's the same with your food.
Sure.
Except for your candidate's not going in your mouth. Your food is.
Thankfully.
So hopefully not.
What does this look like in terms of, will consumers start seeing this type of change? Will they see different labels in the future?
So it's just going to be kind of a continuation of where we've been. The labeling is all part of voluntary, on the part of the producer. Each producer can already opt to do that on their own. There were marketing programs that came out with this that market to a certain variety, and that's the organic market or whatever that is non-GMO, or if that's what a producer wants to grow to. The standards are obviously, they're just an extension of that marketing program. It's not going to be a mandate that requires everybody to label, because obviously the cost effectiveness there is just huge. But some, like I said, discerning customers, that's what they want to see and that's what they want. And so each producer will have that option to voluntarily participate if that's the case. And this just sets a standard for how that will look. So.
Okay. And then just maybe in terms of other areas of agriculture in Colorado and nationally, and then other issues of concern for CFB. What do you see kind of going forward? I know you mentioned early on when you talked about the Farm Bill, you said, I mean, they're talking about 10-year increments when they put these conferences together, right? I mean, what are people thinking about? I mean, a decade.
Right. So, I mean, you know, we were talking about the future of agriculture as a whole, and what the Farm Bill looks like for that purpose. And agriculture is just it's constantly evolving and constantly moving, but it is a constant, you know, in the world. And so you know, Farm Bill has a 10-year effect on greater budget and expenditures on the national level, but it also has that very micro effect, you know, that is your neighbor who's growing couple of 100 acres of sugar beet, you know, out here on the Eastern Plains, and it's that guy being able to buy next year's seed, but also knowing that in 4 years he'll still be able to buy next year's seed, and it provides some certainty. But then, like the hail that just rot this part of the state, it just was horrible. I saw whole cornfields just smashed to the ground and just decimated. And you know, that the Farm Bill provides that safety, that's going to happen. You know, you cannot affect the weather as much as we'd love to try. You cannot have any effect on the weather, and so that Farm Bill provides those safety net programs. It says, okay, we recognize that this is totally out of your control, and so we're going to put a little money back into your operation to keep you going next year and then the year after, because those devastating impacts are not annual. You know, you lose a whole crop. You don't lose only that year. You lose the option to invest in new equipment. You lose the option to do investments into water projects, because you lose that profit line that you can reinvest into your operation and improve upon it. And so that Farm Bill provides that extended certainty, as well as funding opportunities. You know, one of the things we talk about a lot is how agriculturalists are the oldest group of people out there, and I hate to call them old guys because they're some of my favorite people, but they're getting old, and we've got to have a new gen. And so Farm Bill provides that funding opportunity and mechanism, whereas funding is not traditionally easily obtained by folks that don't have the startup capital or the investment, you know, available. Farm Bill provides some of those mechanisms for people that want to get into growing and want to get into producing food. You know, it's hard unless you have something there and waiting for you. It's hard to get into it, and so Farm Bill is certainly that opportunity. Farm Bill works with the programs that fund the ag lending side, the corporate ag lending world, and that's your farm credit component, and the connection there is where we have to draw on to make available funds for not only new and beginning farmers, but returning farmers that need to buy into next year, you know, need to buy more cows or need to buy whatever. And so it's a broad spectrum of what that impact is, and making available that resource for people to keep doing that and coming back, and also replacing the outgoing generation. I mean, baby boomers were not just office dwellers, but they were also farm guys, and so they're aging out on us quickly.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and not to bring it too far back, but something that kind of stuck out to me. Both my and my girlfriend's car were severely damaged in that recent hailstorm. I can't imagine if I had hundreds or thousands of acres of crops that there's no bringing that into the shop afterwards.
No, you're done. Your goose is cooked, as they say. At that point, our Farm Bureau agents on the insurance side, they go, oh, it's hail season. And they feel, you know, because each one of their customers are one of their, you know, their their family in essence, and so they feel for their person. But then not only that, the adjusters that have to deal with the crop loss is just, it's massive, and there's usually a backlog on that. And so that was another modernizing component in this farm bill, is how do we get past that backlog and help get money out to those folks that have lost whole crop. I mean, like you said, hundreds of and even thousands of acres of crop just lost. I watched an onion crop get laid over one time in a hailstorm, and onions are, not hugely grown everywhere. They're very specific to certain climates, and so to watch a whole crop just get laid down and then smell that smell afterwards, it's just horrendous. But that luckily there are certain programs in place to safeguard certain commodities from total loss and being able to recover.
And just we've got a few minutes left here, and you mentioned something that was kind of interesting. We've had a lot of people in here talking about obviously workforce development and STEM education and kind of that pipeline, talent pipeline as they call it. But I hadn't really thought about it from an agriculture perspective, and I've heard that before, that kind of the agriculture community is aging and they need these younger people to kind of get involved. Thinking about the future, what do you recommend? Maybe, what do we need to do to get young people involved, and what do you recommend to someone who's maybe interested and wants to get involved?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I know we got a few minutes left,
and we've only got 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's tough. Agriculture gets really romanticized. I want to ride my horse into the sunset and check my cows, and there's so much more that goes into that. And so we talk about this with young folks that really want to get involved, and they want to learn, and they want to grow, and they want to do these things. And we talk about it a lot. How do we connect those people? And so we at Farm Bureau offer a mentorship program where high school kids specifically can go out and live for a couple of days to a week with a farmer and see the day-to-day. And of course, in my world, I'm thinking, I want that to be the days that the worst possible scenarios can occur. You have to pull a calf manually, and a hailstorm wrecks a whole crop, and because you want them to see what is the toughest part too. The romantic part is beautiful, and we were talking earlier about growing in your backyard and being able to harvest your own, and man, I did that. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, and it's romantic as all get out. It's better than any romance novel Danielle Steele ever wrote. But whenever you have to see the hard part, that's the difficult part. So we have these internships available. We have working programs with certain schools that make available those hands-on experiences, but then also understanding the difficulty of what is funding an agricultural operation, and that you're technically never going to get rich. You just better love it a lot. And so sitting down with people and saying, these are the opportunities where you can fund it. Farm Credit offers this, or Farm Service Agency offers this, but you need to have some investment, some skin in the game too, and how are you going to get to there? And so understanding the reality of what a business is, and that farm business is so much more different than even just regular small business. And so it's an interesting game. Yeah, I get excited when I see young people want to get involved. We have the Young Farmers and Ranchers group within our organization, and it is an active group of folks, and they want to get involved. They want to be on Capitol Hill. They want to be talking. They want to be helping out their neighbor. It's a communal type scenario, and they want to show up when somebody gets sick and help them do harvest. So I love it. Love the opportunity to work with young folks.
Awesome. So if you are a younger listener, or a farmer, or just someone who likes to eat, definitely get in contact with Zach Riley at the Colorado Farm Bureau. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. We really appreciate it. And thank you for listening. You can find this podcast and more at cobrt.com/podcast. Have a good one. Bye-bye.